I'd like to welcome you to the Russian Diplomats Forum sponsored by the Freshman Council. My name is Terry Friedman and I'm chairman of the program. It is now my privilege to introduce to you the two distinguished Soviet diplomats who will participate in today's program. Mr. Alexander Makarov, who is First Secretariat Mr. Makarov is First Secretariat of the Soviet Embassy in Washington and is editor of Soviet Life magazine. And Mr. Boris Sadov, who is Public Information Officer with the Soviet Embassy in Washington. Questioning the two Soviet diplomats will be two UCLA professors and two UCLA students. Dr. Steven Spiegel of Political Science, Dr. David Wilkinson of Political Science, graduate student Richard Lamb in Political Science, and undergraduate Political Science major Alan Bach, who was last quarter president of the Young Americans for Freedom. The format of our program will be similar to Meet the Press. It will begin with a question and answer period involving the members of the panel, which will last for approximately 30 minutes. And this will be followed by questions and answers from the audience to the two Soviet diplomats. And following this part of the program, we'll adjourn to the upstairs, where there will be a coffee hour and informal discussion with the two Soviet diplomats. Before we begin the program, I think Mr. Makarov would like to make a short statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank you very much for giving us opportunity to be here, and allow me also to say that our moderator said that we are distinguished diplomats. I don't know how distinguished diplomats we are, but I may state that we are, both of us are journalists, and we came from Washington to this place, to Los Angeles, to answer your questions with great hope that this discussion between two Russians on the one hand and American students on the other hand will give us opportunity to find out something about each other people, and this, in our opinion, is very important nowadays, particularly between the nations like our two, which are lying far away on the one hand, but which live on the one on earth and want to live and promote peace and friendship. And I also want to say that we are very honored to have on the panel so many distinguished gentlemen who will question or interrogate us, I don't know. Thank you very much anyway. We hope that we shall give answers frankly, and what we can state we shall.
We will begin the question and answer period with Professor Spiegel.
Gentlemen, in the light of your government's stated interest in peace in Vietnam, how is it that your government has refrained thus far from assisting the British in reconvening the Geneva Conference, particularly in the light of the fact that the American government would presumably have much less flexibility in such a conference?
Well, to begin with, as I mentioned, that this question is very interesting, of course. And you certainly expect us to give you a very exact explanation of what is going on. I think that the opinion of our people and the government as well is that it is the people that must and will decide the destiny of their country. So we feel that the people of Vietnam want to decide their own destiny by themselves. So I could tell you that why don't you allow them to make that decision and to decide what they want, what form of government they want. You, everyone here, I hope, knows that there was once a decision that there will be free election in South Vietnam. And you also know who sabotaged these free elections, who didn't want to go to elections. So this is how it stands. And I also want to say something else. I think maybe there is a misunderstanding in this audience about me and about my friend Boris. We are here rather in capacity of the representatives of the Soviet Life magazine, and in the capacity of journalist, because I am the managing editor. And I feel that I need to explain that this magazine is circulated and published in this country on a reciprocal agreement between our two governments. The magazine called America is published in the Soviet Union. The idea behind these two magazines circulation is simple and I think very good. To give each other, to give Americans, American people, and to give Russian people additional opportunity to know and learn more about the others. So we, in the Soviet Life magazine, print materials and stories and discuss problems which concern our people, our nation, our country. And the same is true to America magazine. And that is why I think we thus give additional promotion to better understanding between our two countries and two people.
Let me just...
and a promotion to the magazine itself.
Let me just follow this general thought up. You may believe that the Vietnamese people should settle this issue, but presumably the American government has played a role in this country and is at least, shall we say, unwilling or perhaps unable, whatever, to solve this problem or to allow the Vietnamese people themselves to solve this problem. In this light, if the American government has participated, wouldn't it be more in the interest of the North Vietnamese for the Russian government to participate at Geneva?
Well, our stand is, first of all, that, we once participated in Geneva Conference, and we're fully backed, the decisions made by the Geneva Conference. And at the present moment, we don't feel that if the convention of the Geneva Conference will be, will take place, there will be definite results out of it. Just because we are not fully aware that the sides engaged in the fighting in the North Vietnam or in the South Vietnam will come there, so to say, with open hearts and with open minds, really to bring the issue to the negotiating table. When we'll be aware of that, I think probably we'll change our opinion to that.
Mr. Lamb?
I'd like to turn to something in this country. First of all, I'd like to know what kind of coverage the Soviet press is giving of the current electoral campaigns in this country, and also how you view the election. For example, do you see any difference between Johnson and people that the Republicans might put up? For example, what difference do you think there might be between a Johnson or a Nixon as President of the United States in the future?
Well, I'll tell you that to answer this question, that of course our press is watching very closely to the election campaign in this country. I would say you that at least almost in every issue, there is a piece of election campaign here. But, we're a kind of an official capacity here, and in accordance with certain regulations, wouldn't be discussed who will be better, Nixon or Johnson. I think probably you'll better know who will be better and choose the right one.
I didn't really mean it in terms of who would be better. I just mean, do you see any difference between them? In their, which has nothing to do with whether you think they're good or bad.
Well, one is older, the one is younger.
Very good. Professor Wilkinson?
You've said that you're here partly in pursuit of better relations and understanding, which are certainly very desirable. At the same time, there are some concrete obstacles to such better relations and understanding, which must be removed before these can be attained between the United States and Soviet Union. Now, currently, we see certain small states dominated by what you might well be prepared to call cults of personality, engaging in adventurous foreign policies. The policies of Cuba and of North Vietnam are well known. Now the North Korean military rule appears bent on imitating these to some degree. The support of the Soviet Union for these states runs into the billions of dollars, yet your reward from their rulers is abuse on the one hand, defiance of advice, and an invitation to accept the astronomical risks which they seem to think are better held on your shoulders than theirs. The true community of interest between the Soviet Union, which is a great power, a developed state without a need for military adventures and political cults, and these small and dissatisfied powers, is difficult to find. You once disowned the foreign policy line followed by Mao Zedong in China for just these reasons, among others, and yet you proclaim with these smaller states a fraternal solidarity which seems not particularly rewarding. I wonder, does the Soviet Union propose to bear indefinitely any sort of risks to which these leaders choose to subject it? And is the Soviet Union prepared to allow the ambitions of leaders of small states to stand indefinitely in the way of any general settlement between the United States and Soviets?
Very good speech.
And then I think that after that probably we'll think the whole issue over. Just because we never thought in those, so to say, particular lines. We thought in different lines. We thought that we have a lot of friends in socialist countries and we are willing to support them. But after you explain us what they do mean, probably we'll think it over. Thank you.
Mr. Bach?
Within the Soviet Union itself, particularly in the wake of the trial of the two Russian writers Daniel and Sinyovsky, and more recently in terms of the protests among the Soviet intelligentsia that have arisen from that trial and from what many consider to be the rather inhuman punishment meted out to those writers, and more recently the January 12th trial of 4 Soviet writers, including Alexander Ginsburg, editor of the Phoenix 66, who were convicted under Article 190 of the Soviet Constitution, which proscribes activity against the interest of society. There are many who wonder if there is not some kind of a rebellion or internal ferment growing within the Soviet Union among the intellectuals, among the writers, among those who have some contact with exiles in the West. And it is said that the men in the Kremlin probably live in more fear from the people themselves than almost any rulers in history. Do you think there is any possibility of rebellion or revolution within the Soviet Union in the near future?
Well, I understand that you are for freedom. Probably this is the case. Yes, well, I will tell you that, of course, all this news are a lot exaggerated in this country. And I think that, well, this is a big affair here than within our people. And I don't think that, our people do feel like rebelling or make another revolution. We made one revolution in 1917. We liked it. We happen to like the present state of affairs, and I think that we'll be happy to continue that and to get a communist society which we are constructing in our country. But I'm not aware of any, rebelling or revolution movement or anything like that, outside of what sometimes people who would like to see that are telling about that.
I don't know if the reports are exaggerated in this country or not. Mr. Eugene Lyons, who was a correspondent in the Soviet Union in the late 20s and early 30s, felt that reports of rebellion were far from exaggerated, but were downplayed primarily by Western correspondents for various reasons. What is the condition of, is there censorship of Western correspondents in Moscow?
You'll better ask Western correspondents this question. I never happened to be one.
Thank you.
Dr. Spiegel?
What do you think, or what does the Russian government think, that the United States and Israel would have to do for the Russian government to refrain from giving further armaments to and further assistance to nations of the Arab world?
Why do you ask question in this form? Why the Israel and the United States should do? We in the Soviet Union, as well as I hope in this country, very anxious to upkeep and to preserve peace everywhere in the world. And we certainly want to preserve peace and do not want that war would start in any place. That's the main point. And we are trying to do our best to preserve this peace.
Do you really think that giving arms to the Arab world is the best way to promote peace in the Middle East?
Well, there are many ways of how to do it. There is one way that you do it in Vietnam, which you know how you do it over there. We don't want it like that. We think that it is better to somehow to have balanced forces and then to come to a round table and to find out through United Nations the solution. That's what we are trying to do.
Mr. Lamb?
Assuming that the war in Vietnam might end someday, and attention might again be shifted to Europe, what possibilities might you see for the resolution of the question of a unified Germany? Or do you have any fears about such a resolution?
Well, we don't have any fears, and actually we do feel that the question will be solved in the future. But as you know, well, I think that the question you're asking now, it's a question for a lecture for about an hour and a half at least. I can lecture even longer than that. But to make this short, one should, just get across the fact that there are two different German states now exist in the world. And to solve the problem, it doesn't mean just not to recognize one part of the Germany and saying that this German state doesn't exist. It seems to me that the best solution possible might come through the negotiations between two German states. And when the conditions will be upped, they will have negotiations and they will rejoin the country. I think that this will be in the history, and well, we have just wait and see when Germans will decide that they do want that, rather than we'll think that we think that they have to do that.
Dr. Wilkinson?
Alexander Tchaikovsky has recently proposed that Soviet citizens who don't want to hear moral lectures at their clubs should be permitted to have clubs where it is possible to discuss and to obtain answers to the questions that upset them. Now, we're all for freedom, but isn't this this idea of having clubs where it's possible to discuss and to obtain answers to questions that upset one a sort of dangerous innovation fraught with risks? Discussion clubs in themselves may seem harmless, but don't they generally lead to more perilous steps? such as arriving at one's own conclusions, harboring dissenting opinions, demanding the right to disseminate them, holding meetings, and even more extreme acts. Is the Soviet Union really prepared at the current stage of transition to communism for so consequential a decision as having clubs where it is possible to discuss and all these other things?
Do you believe that our people don't discuss anything? Well,
Well-
you mean you need just a placard to put on the wall and say, this is a club for discussion. I do think that, when we get together with my friends or, some other people get together the way they're doing here, they do discuss a lot of things. And I don't see that there is any ground or any wise, sense in the suggestion, well, to my best knowledge. Just because how can you put, people and say, don't discuss anything? That's impossible to do with anyone. And but if you're going to discuss, I don't think that everyone is putting to his apartment or his, dormitory sign, here we're thinking and we're discussing. But they in the dormitory are not doing the same. So, well, I don't think that it's a good, so it's a point.
Mr. Bach?
There's been a great deal of discussion about anti-Semitism within the Soviet Union, pros and cons, does it exist, does it not? There seems to most Western observers to be not too much doubt that there at various times have been programs carried out against Jews within the Soviet Union. I should like to ask if A, if you're prepared to deny this, and B, if it is true, is this a result of government policy in line with communist ideology against religion per se, or is it because of some sort of anti-Semitism among certain segments of the Soviet population?
And the answer A is we are prepared to deny and we deny. And B is there is always this question asked, and there is always this question discussed, particularly when it comes to one of the spring holidays, of Jewish holidays, when matzah is being baked. And usually I think that people who start these discussions, the communities and the leaders probably who start these discussions, they wouldn't care less what is really happening and happens in the Soviet Union. They just want to discuss it and to start the ball rolling. And they always say that there is not enough matzu in the Soviet Union being baked and so on and so forth. But those people who go there and who want seriously to find out what is going on in the Soviet Union, they come and say that there is no any discrimination. And this is so. Of course, you will have in mind that there is a society, a state, which mainly said from the very beginning that it separates the church from state. Incidentally, church is also separated from the state in this country. We also say that we are allowing free atheist propaganda in the Soviet Union. And of course, we also do not deny to people who want to believe, who want to have their faith, we do not deny that. You know that there are many believers in the country, particularly among older generation. That's all.
Dr. Spiegel?
It has been said that today the Russian people fear the Chinese far more than the Americans. And it also has been said that the Russians are interested in cooperation with the United States. I could ask, are you interested in cooperation with the United States? I assume you would say yes, so therefore let me go on to ask that do you feel that the United States has hindered this cooperation with the Soviet Union and has hindered progress towards détente? Would you give specific examples, preferably not discussing merely Vietnam?
Well, for one thing, I don't think that we do have a fear we're not in the position to fear. For one thing, just because our country is a quite, well prepared for any occasion state. And the second thing is that we don't believe that what is going on now in China is really, the feeling of the Chinese people. Probably this is, the feeling of certain group which is concentrated together with Mao Zedong. And we do, since that, we don't think that there is a majority opinion in China. We do believe that this is opinion of a small group, and we happen to have a kind of information which, shows that we have a right opinion to that. So we think that this is a temporarily, and we do hope that in the future, we don't know whether it will be tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, or in a week time. We hope that will be tomorrow, when so to say, the state of affairs will change in China, and we'll have friendly and cordial relations with Chinese people. For that reason, I don't think that I have to answer your second question.
Well, then let me just rephrase the second question and say that regardless of the Chinese, I assume that you are interested in cooperation with the United States. Do you feel we've hindered this progress?
Well, definitely so. Very much so. I'll tell you, just because there is a feeling in our country, and I think that there is growing feeling in this country, to my best knowledge and to my judgment, just because here I'm already for a certain period of time. I would say that about 5 years. So I can judge that the feeling between two countries, and my country and this country, is growing, that the world should be safe only in the case of the cooperation between two countries. And during last year, you have to judge, in several occasions when our governments could get together just to solve the certain situations, certain dangerous situations. The place, one case was during this Israeli aggression against against Arabic countries. Well, I see your reaction. But let me put it this way, that the war was being started by Israel, but not by Arabs. And the discussion was, let me continue, the discussion was between our two countries that if we manage to, and if we'll suggest Arabs not to start the war, and you suggest the Israel not to start the war, we can, get together and make certain arrangements with this Tirana Strip and all those areas. Well, it happened so that, Israel started the war, and it happened so that we were not in the position, and we were not being in the position, tried to solve this case peacefully before the war. So this is a little bit different from what you thought, maybe. Yes, but in this case, we cooperated, and we decided that it is not wise for us, to start killing each other just because of the incident. And that was the case in some other places during Cuban Missile Crisis, if you can recall it. Those days I was at the United Nations, and I'm fully aware of the whole discussions which took place over there. And I'll tell you that those days also there was a communication between two governments to the extent that we have to find a certain peaceful solution out of the crisis. Just because your government and President Kennedy and our government and Chairman Khrushchev were fully aware, both are late, were fully aware that one possible solution might be the peaceful solution, and another solution might be the all-round atomic war, which might bring the death not only to the people of this country and my country, but also for every people in the world, every man and every woman in the world, whether they are living in Africa, Australia, or on Bahama Islands.
Mr. Lamb?
There's an article in the Los Angeles Times this morning to the effect that a couple of Soviet diplomats were expelled from, or effectively expelled from, Kenya, and were accused by the Kenyan government of acting, or one of them anyway, as acting as a director of a spy or intelligence organization. This, to be fair, at the same time, previously two Americans had been excluded also, being accused agents of the CIA. Now this raises a question of the uses of embassies as bases for intelligence operations and so forth. And would you care to comment on these developments in Kenya?
Well, since this was in today's papers, we arrived here yesterday. So I even didn't read that. And this is a news that you break to me now.
Okay, I'll put the question more.
Well,
more
but
general.
I'll tell you that's a little bit, strange question, just because you know that those things happen very often in one country, in another country, in the third country. So, well, what you're going to, particularly what you're driving at, may I say?
Okay, more generally, then, I won't talk about Kenya. What do you think about this question, about this debate, this matter of governments using, both sides, using their embassies as basis for intelligence and spy operations?
You'll ask the government. Why are you asking me? You said that the governments are using that.
Well, all I've heard is one side, and I'm curious in hearing the other one.
I still can't understand what you were going to ask about. I'm sorry.
Okay, there is a problem involved, or at least for me, I'm confused. There is a considerable amount of debate, I think, about governments, many governments, using their embassies as basis for spy operations of one kind or another. Americans have been accused of doing it in the Soviet Union. Soviets have been accused of doing it in this country. And I would just like your comments on this matter. Or do you have any feelings about it, or do you not?
Well, just to give you one example, is there was once a plane flying over the territory of the USSR. And you know what happened then? Then my feeling is that it is very bad for a country to send her pilots over the territory of the other country with the aim of intelligence.
Excuse me, gentlemen, we only have about 5 more minutes, so try to keep your last questions very brief. Thank you. Professor Wilkinson?
I'll try to make it 3 sentences, no more. It seems to many of us a positive development that the role of Stalin in World War II is being reinterpreted by Soviet history. As long as this particular role is being reinterpreted, I wonder if it's reasonable to ask what the current status in the Soviet history books of the figure of Leon Trotsky would be. Is he a white guardist, a British agent, a defeatist, or a non-entity, or what?
We are not adherents of Trotsky. That is true.
Well, I will tell you one thing which recently was big issue, you know. A lot of people asking us about this, you know, the problem of supporting liberal movements, national liberation movements, and some other things. And I'll tell you that once during the beginning of the Soviet state, as you can recall, Lenin and Trotsky were discussing this problem, and Trotsky was for exporting revolutions to other countries. Lenin was against that. I will tell you that the majority supported Lenin, and we're still supporting him on this issue as in many other issues. So I don't think that there is anything that was being changed too much. But Trotsky was, you know, he was against the general policy of our party, and this is how he is, you know, was treated all the time. That he was the man who was against the general policy of the party. That's it. He never was treated in any other way. As you can recall, even he was, you know, he wasn't put into the prison in the country. He was just be allowed to leave the country.
Mr. Bach?
You have issued your support for self-determination and national liberation. I wonder if you would support self-determination and national liberation in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, the Ukraine, any of some of the various other countries of Eastern Europe.
Yes. Would you support the national liberation of the Black Power, of the Texas, of the Los Angeles state.
Shall I take that non-answer as my final word then?
Dr. Spiegel?
What do you think are the basic differences between Soviet and American society?
If you don't see the difference, I tell you in a nutshell, we have no private property and private enterprise. You have. That's the main point.
You think then these are mainly economic and not political, these differences?
Well, then all comes, the basic is there, and then comes differences in policies, in politics, and everywhere.
Do you think Soviet and American societies are becoming any more alike?
Beg your pardon?
Are the two societies becoming any more alike?
I hope they will in the long run of history when United States will become socialist.
Final question, Mr. Lamb.
According to a recent report, several war industries in the Soviet Union have been converted or are in the process of converting to producing consumer goods, such as home appliances, refrigerators, and the like. And I'm curious, I'd never heard about this before, and I'm wondering when was such a decision made to undertake this conversion, and how much of this is actually taking place?
I'm not aware of this either. You know, you said that you just recently came across that. I never came across such a thing.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. This will conclude the first part of the Russian Diplomats Forum. Now we'll open questions from the audience of the two Soviet diplomats. We have a microphone over to your right, so if you can get into line and ask the questions.
There's one over here too.
And we have microphones on both sides. The microphone on the right, please.
Yes, I liked your comment about separation from church of state, but I believe in the difference between Soviet Union and the United States, and the separation is that here it's separation, in the Soviet Union it's exclusion. I'd like to bring up the point of anti-Semitism. Now you deny it. And if you deny it, could you just please answer these few questions? When will Chaim Pechersky be returned from Siberia, the leader of the Leningrad Jewish community? When will Jews have equal rights with other Russian minorities, for example, their own press, which the Jews are the only religion in the Soviet Union who cannot have their own press? When will the building of new synagogues take place in Moscow and other cities? For example, in Moscow, for the hundreds of thousands of Jews there are, or 200,000, there's only one synagogue. This is a great freedom of religion. Nice fire hazard. When will Jews be allowed to receive religious articles from relatives and friends from abroad? It is obvious that Russian Jews refuse to accept prayer shawls, prayer books from their relatives that come from abroad because they fear the consequences. When will a memorial be built on the site of Babi Yar in Kiev? I understand that now there's a shopping center or an apartment building built on the graves of 70,000 Jews who were massacred by the Germans and the Ukrainians. And when will there be free emigration for all Soviet citizens? I hope you heard the question, sir.
I'm sorry?
When will there be free emigration for all Soviet citizens?
You ask so many questions that I hope to remember all of them. But anyway, first is that we have a quite big immigration from the Soviet Union. I mean, comparatively, of course. So, huh?
Compared to what?
Well, comparatively to probably the immigration from the United States, I would say.
That's true.
So there is no problem. If you're going to leave, you can leave. The second thing is that what I'm very much aware, yes, I will tell you, for example, this summer, I already told this time, this summer I was going from Moscow by the airplane to this country, and I will tell you that we were a single couple with my wife, you know, who were going here on assignment. As for the rest, the whole plane was immigrants. So, well, this just shows, well, this is even the proportion. We do have certain regulations on that, though. The regulation include one thing, that if you're going to the country, you have to show the ability that, how to say, that your relatives will take care of you and they will pay your stay over there or something like that. Just because we had bad experiences in the past, when the people were going to a country and after that they were coming back to the Soviet embassy and begging, would you buy me a ticket to get back from that country back home? And we paid so many tickets that now we say, if you're going to live there. And so now just one regulation, if you have a relative in Moscow or any other place, if you'll prove that you'll support him financially here, we'll allow him to go and see you and stay with you as long as you wish to. Okay? This is the first thing. Yeah. Second, let me continue. Second, what you say? What else? Yes, about those synagogues and everything. Well, I'm just wondering. I never heard that Israeli people, have some descent with the Russian people. And I'm very much aware that, some Jew population in this country are so much interested in the life of the Jews in my country. This is make me just think, why is it so, whether they are more Jew than they are, or what is different between you and them. The second thing is that correspondents from this country and the Jewish community, by the way, community leaders from this country recently were in Moscow and in some other places. And when they came back, they said that it's just propaganda and some, anti-Soviet Jewish community here, rather than it's a real state of affairs. I happen to believe your leaders were saying that. And the same is going on also with your journalists. If you know, for example, Jewish Telegraph Agency, I also had a big excursion to the Soviet Union, and they happened to find out that it's a bit of propaganda. And they said, though we also did the same thing, we now find out that it's not exactly true. So, you'll better listen both sides rather than one side.
All right.
This is the second.
Let me just ask a question then. Is it propaganda that there is only one synagogue in the entire city of Moscow, other than the basements of Jewish homes?
Well, I'll tell you that probably it is not, but I don't think that we have so many religious people. I'm not a religious people.
Is that why 20,000 Jews turned out on Sukkot this last October? 20,000 Jews on the street in front of the synagogue.
Oh, well, that is very...
Is that 20,000?
Yes, the same is going with Buddhists. You know that we have just one Buddhist church in Moscow. And when it happens to be their holiday, they're gathering all around them.
How many Russian Orthodox churches do you have in Moscow?
Yes, but probably two or three who are working, Not more than that, but it's more, Russian Orthodox believers than Jews. And another thing is that, so I will tell you that Mr. Makarov explained to you that we're against every religion. And we don't want to say that we're against Jewish religion more than against Buddhism, or we're against Buddhism more than against Russian Orthodox Church. We're against just because we're atheists, and we're a theistic state. But we don't say that you shouldn't participate in the religion service. If you would like to do that, be most happy. I'll tell you, for example, that I'm from the family with very, very strong, religious, so to say, participations, and they do believe a lot in religion, and they go to church, and I happen to go with them when I was a small kid. Now I don't believe any longer, but nothing happened to me or to my family. Another, next question was about,
Press.
Oh, Bobby Yard. I will tell you that so many articles on Bobby Yard and so many prayers for Bobby Yard as was being published in my country, I hope that will be just 1,000 of that published in this country. And this is a great honor. And you know that the biggest poem in our country is devoted to Bobby Yard. And this poem is read everywhere. So we honor this place very well. Now with the press, we do have Jewish publications and we do have Jewish press. And by the way, more than you have that here in this country, I mean outside of the religion press. Then, sometimes people ask, why don't you have theaters? We do have Jewish theaters. And by the way, you don't have the Jewish theaters here. So why don't you dissent, and why don't you say that we have to have Jewish theaters here?
Before we go to the next question, I'd like to add that we do have several questions, so please try to keep yours brief. Question on the left.
Okay, mine is regarding the same subject. I'm sorry we can't have the kind of variety you'd like to have, but I am too concerned very much with the subject of anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union, whether or not it does exist. There is one thing which is very curious to me, which as yet has not been brought out, much in disaccord with your statement that there is not anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union. You've said that there is no such anti-Semitism. I would be curious to know, if this is true, why is it that Jews are the only ones of a religious group that have to carry on their identification, such identification that says that they are Jewish? Other people have to say that they're from Kiev or from Moscow, I understand, or from whatever geographic area they come from. But Jews, unlike other people, have to have on their identification that they are Jewish.
This is nonsense, complete nonsense.
It's not nonsense.
You'll tell me. You are living in the country, or I am living in the country.
You spoke before of these Jewish leaders who went
Yes.
en masse this past year.
And they
returned, and they said that this is one of the things that bothered them very much, and they couldn't get an answer for
that
it.
there is a special certification that they are Jew.
On their identification.
They read, something from before the revolution. They'll better read, some books after the revolution.
If it was from something they had read, I could understand it. It was from the people they talked to and the identification cards that they saw.
I can aware of that.
Question on the right, please.
I'd like to sort of put the shoe on the other foot here. I'd like to put the shoe on the other foot. Sir, you say you support national liberation movements. Why are you doing so little for it? Specifically, why is Russia holding the reins on the Cuban revolutionary activity?
Can you explain what you mean? I don't very well understand the question.
I say you said just a couple of minutes ago that you support revolutionary national liberation fronts and revolutionary activity for socialism, for communism. Why is the Soviet Union doing so little to support this? Specifically, we hear reports that the Soviet Union is trying to bridle the activity of Castro in South America. Why is so little being done? Are you being conservative or hypocritical?
Well, we follow scientific Marxism, and we are against exportation of revolution. We feel and think that it is the people who must and who will decide when the time is ripe for the revolution. And we are against exportation of revolution as well as against exportation of counter-revolution. I think this will answer the question, because you can't just do it like this, that today we decided that there will be a revolution somewhere, say in San Domingo or any other place, or there will be a counter-revolution, and there must be some forces brought over there. This is not our belief.
Question on the left, please.
Yes. What I'd first like to say is that I think that everybody in the audience has learned a lot from your visit, and I think that the audience is very privileged to have you here. I think it's fairly apparent to the audience and probably to you that there's many misconceptions on the Soviet part about American life and on American part of Soviet life. I was wondering if you could enlighten us, first of all, why the Soviet people are against religion, and because Americans have regarded religion, or at least up to recent times, as part of their heritage. And secondly, how do the Soviets view the Black Revolution in the United States?
Well, I thank you very much for the first part of the question. And for the second part of it, speaking about, what was your second part?
Right, that's the part you have to answer. I had asked exactly how, first of all, the Russians view the Black Revolution, and secondly, why the Soviet people are against religion.
Well, I didn't know before. I live here for 4 years now in the United States. And before coming here, I didn't know that American young people so much concerned about religion. And about the second part of the question about Black Revolution, I think we wouldn't be right if we started commenting on your internal affairs, because we are in this country as in the capacity of diplomats.
I think, if I may go on, I think you've answered wisely, to say the least, but I was wondering if you could really enlighten us as to why you are against religion. You stated that you were against all religions, not against any religion more than another. In America, we have more or less freedom of religion, freedom of belief. Why are you specifically against religion?
Because you believe in what you believe. We don't believe in what we don't believe. We don't believe in God. That's why we are atheists. That's why we are against religion. But as I say, I had my mother, for example. She is of older generation. She believes in God, and still I am an atheist, and she is not, and still we coexist very well.
Question on the right.
I have a question that is a little closer to the Soviet Union itself, because I am from Latvia. I was born in Latvia and I came here after the Second World War. And as you know, these countries, Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, they were independent and sovereign states before the Second World War. And they were handed over to you, the Soviet Union, by the Hitler-Ribbentrop Pact. The Stalin-Soviet, the German-Russian Pact. Now, if you are press correspondents, have you ever traveled in the Baltic states? Are you aware of the revolution there against this state of affairs whereby we have lost our national independence? If you support Black Revolution here, what is your attitude towards the Baltic people if that question is brought up in the United Nations, a roundtable conference?
Well, say the last words we say.
If the Baltic people succeed in bringing their issue to the United Nations, there is such an organization like BATU and Baltic Appeal to the United Nations. If they succeed in bringing this to the United Nations, and you are all for peace and the roundtable conference, what will be your reaction to this issue in the United Nations? Will it be the same as in the Hungarian issue where you just refuse to talk about it?
If we have, in accordance with our constitution, that every nationality has its own right for self-determination. If you can recall, after our state was born, we gave the right for self-determination to Finland, and Finland is a free state now. We gave the same right. We gave the same right, to Poland and some other states. What I will tell you that if people of Latvia, Estonia, or Litva decide that they're going to live in their own state, and they will apply to the Soviet Union will give them the permission. But that doesn't mean that if people from outside living in the United States will decide that they would like to have some free state, so to say, free state in Lithuania, that in this case, the Soviet government will be most willing to let them to take over the, say, Latvia, Estonia, or Litva.
Can I answer you? Finland had to fight for independence, and also the Baltic states had to fight for them. I'm an exile. I'm not living. I'm here because of political pressures. I cannot go back to Latvia and say that an appeal to you, go to the Soviet Union, the Chamber of Nationalities, and say we should have independence because you took it away in the first place with Hitler. That wasn't a fair deal.
It seems to me that I answered your question. People, to my best knowledge, people are very happy that they're living, probably you'll be in there, so you know better. I was there several times, so I've seen that with my own eyes, and I will tell you that if you've been there and you have the great arguments, probably you're right. I don't know that. But and another thing, but I don't know that there is a kind of revolution movement over there or some other movement which is going to separate those pre-Baltic republics outside from the Soviet Union. I do think that they gain a lot, by joining the Union, and I don't believe that they'll gain a lot just separating from the Union. This is my belief. I don't think that, for example, if California will separate from the United States, there'll be a wise thing for the state of California. So this is what I do think about that.
Well,
if those people will do believe in their separation, and if they will tell that the Union that they're going to separate the republics, as I saw you, that we have the Constitution, and we'll go to the point of this Constitution, till their separation and arranging for the independent states, as you say.
Well, okay, I'll finish up with one last statement. California and the United States are two different things. Latvians, Estonians, and Lithuanians
It was
are not
also
Russians.
bought, from Mexico one day. So it was also arrangement. So why don't that's given, back to Mexico, something like that,
This just, in other words, you deny national liberation movements because you say that the people are satisfied. If you were in Latvia in 1960, you would have seen that there was a purge in the Latvian Communist Party whereby Khrushchev himself went to Riga to remove all Latvians who said Latvians for Latvia.
I'm sorry, will you have been there those days?
I haven't been recently.
Yes,
no.
you've been on 1960?
No.
So why do you say that then?
Why do I say that?
Yeah.
Because I read this in your own press.
In what press?
In your own press, Pravda, they said that there were a certain amount of Latvians who had to be cleaned out of the Latvian Communist Party, not, reactionary nationalists.
You did it in Russian or what?
I read Russian, yes. I also
And
read
you've
Latvian.
seen that in Pravda?
Pravda and Tsinya. You know what is Tsinya?
Yes.
That is a Latvian Communist organ party.
I happen not to read this in Pravda, I'm sorry.
You deny Comrade Khrushchev's assertion that there was an independence movement in there, like Latvian communists themselves who say we are under colonial and imperialist exploitation. You say this is a good deal for the Latvians? You say we joined. Who joined us, the Soviet Union?
You mean Khrushchev said it or who?
Yes.
Khrushchev said that he is under pressure or he is going for liberation or what?
Khrushchev said that there are certain reactionary circles in the Baltic states that want to reinstitute independence for the people, for the states.
No, he said that there is certain reaction circles outside of this pre-Baltic states who are going to do that, but he never said that in those republics. Yes, he mentioned that there are certain organizations abroad who would like to do that. But he never said that it was, in the pre-Baltics.
Do you know who Berklavs was? He was the first secretary of the Latvian Communist Party. Berklavs and there are 20 other top members of the Communist Party that were purged by Khrushchev himself. Apparently, this must have been a very serious movement if Khrushchev had to go to Riga himself. These were not old communists. These weren't exiles. These were young communists.
I think the young interrogator should go to the Republic of Baltic himself and find out what people there think about this, and that's all.
Question on the left, please be brief.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm also a very dissatisfied exile, this time from Lithuania. Gentlemen. Gentlemen, you have evaded all questions dealing with whether or not you actually do, in fact, support the free movements of certain peoples. In Lithuania, it is well known that there has been a strong resistance movement, whom you call hooliganism, against your government as late as 1956, the same year, of course, as the Hungarian Revolution. I want to know what the people have to do, other than, of course, your complete Russification process by which you're getting rid of the people anyway, to impress upon you that they do not want your rule, that they want you to leave. When are you going to leave?
Did you participate in that movement?
Yes, sir, I did.
It was in 1956.
One more question, if I might.
No, I'm sorry. It was in 1956, I said?
1956 was the last major battle with your troops.
You participated in that?
Yes, I did.
Where did it happen?
I'm afraid that's rather classified information. My family is still in the Baltic country. One more question.
But you were a hooligan or what? I'm sorry.
No,
Oh, you
no.
were at the moment.
No, I didn't. As you well know, there are numbers of people from the partisans that are now presently in the United States and cannot reveal who, in fact, their proper names are because their families are in terror every day. And you know what terror means, don't you, sir?
Oh, so classified, yes.
Yes. One more question. Did you build the Berlin Wall to keep us out, contaminating your people, or to keep your people in? Is this free immigration?
Well, speaking about wall is built in Berlin, and it was the decision of the government of Democratic Republic of Germany to build the wall. Yes, so why, first question is, why you ask us about the wall? And second, there was possibly a necessity to build the wall because I hear that there was much of smuggling coming from Western Berlin into Eastern because there were much transportation was allowed to go there and here, and that's how it started.
I have yet to see American troops or Allied troops shoot people trying to get to your side. But I have seen many people shot the opposite way. How do you explain this?
But there were cases, by the way. They were not written in these newspapers, but there were cases.
Let us not talk about isolated cases. Let's talk about the trend of shootings.
Well, you also talk about the isolated cases from the other side.
No, sir.
That happened to be, well, even considering your newspapers, it happened to be probably, well, as I can recall, 6 or 5 cases like that.
Do you deny then that your people, that is the people of not free Germany, Eastern Germany, in fact, do you think that they in fact want to stay there and that they are escaping just at random?
I'm sorry, ma'am, they're free Germany, and they like to be there. And by the way,
Let's not quibble about semantics then.
Recently, by the way, you know that now the people are coming from west to east more than are outnumbered. The people
to visit their relatives.
No, I mean to live. To live.
I'd like
This is going with the statistics by the West Germany.
Where?
West German statistics. That the number of people coming from West Germany to East Germany
I
now
think you're a liar.
outnumbered.
That is a lie.
Let's try to keep this conversation on a more moderate level, please. Question on the right.
I would like to know what you consider to be the major political error made by either the Khrushchev administration or the present administration in your country.
I'm sorry. You're talking too fast, you know. We are foreigners. You have to consider that.
Okay. I'd like to know what you would, in your personal opinion, what is or what has been the major political or perhaps even social error committed by your government in your country since 1956? Or has there been any errors committed?
1966? 56.
1956.
If you're watching close, you know, to the information, you know about our meetings of the Central Committee of the party, you know, our meetings within the government, and you know that they usually, so to say, telling about what our government and our people think we committed, you know, what errors and what was mistakes.
I'm not challenging that. I'm merely interested.
I'm just telling you, just because, you know, it is very hard now to start enumerating, you know, 10 years and up. It's a big lecture rather than just a point, small point.
Thank you.
Question on the left, please.
Yes, about 3 weeks ago, a group of Cuban citizens, by the way, all members of the Communist Party, were found guilty in a trial of attempting to subvert the Cuban Revolution. It was said that they were working with some officials of the Soviet Union. I'd like to know your reaction to that.
I've read it also only in American newspapers, so I don't have a full judgment until the moment.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have much time, so please try to keep your questions very brief.
Yes, and,
You
On the
stated
right,
bef-
please.
You stated earlier that in the Middle East it was Israel that started the war or was the aggressive nation. I'd like to know if you would believe that if some country, the United States or some other country, could manage to suppress your shipping, a high percentage of your shipping in Russia, would you or would you not consider that an act of war?
Well, concerning our policy in the Middle East...
Considering Russia.
Yes, that was our policy.
Right.
Right. So I'll tell you that we do believe in the existence of the Israel, and we stated it several times, and we are still, this is our policy, that Israel has the right to stay there just because it's a state, and it should be a free state. This is our policy. By the way, when Mr. Kosygin was here, he also stated that from the General Assembly, and we do think that all other questions with shipments and everything should be considered through the negotiations, through the diplomatic channels, rather through the war.
You didn't answer the question.
I answer you. I said that we would like to consider all the questions through diplomatic channels rather than through the war.
But you say that Israel is the one that was the aggressor and it was the Arabs that were on the defensive. Now, do you consider it a defensive to close the shipping to Israel? If someone would do this to Russia, would that be a defensive action?
I mean that they didn't start the war. That was I meant.
Who
was the first to bomb and who was the first to sheltering?
Shooting and bombing is not the only way of starting a war, and it is not the only act of war possible.
Well, probably this is not the way to start the war at all. But I think that when the bombs are falling, this is a war. This is at
There's
least
no
I
such thing as an
understand
economic war?
That's another question, I guess.
We'll have to go on. Question on...
This will be very quick. You say that your policy in the Middle East is for a balance of power. I think it's fairly common knowledge that the Israeli military, the army, the arms, number of ships, number of planes, etc., cannot match at all the Arabs. And here you are arming the Arabs, and the United States is not arming Israel. France is not arming Israel. They are getting hardly any arms. And you say you are continuing a balance?
Well, I understand the young man is very anxious that there were more hot places in the world than there are now. So you are trying to somehow help bring up something like strain in the Middle East. Is that correct?
I don't understand what you mean.
We are, as I mentioned, we are trying to find some way to stop tension and hot tension in various places, including Middle East. And we are doing what we can on our part. And of course we feel and think that the government and state of Israel will and should follow the decision of the United Nations to withdraw their troops from the occupied territories and to find the peaceful solution to all problems over there. That's all.
But this doesn't answer the imbalance of power.
Well, if you would like to ask this question, we're finishing now. We'll just come out to see us and we'll discuss with you, just because it takes too much time, I guess. Okay?
Right now I'll have the last question. I'd like to say one thing. When the questioning ends here, we can all adjourn up to the upstairs graduate student lounge to continue a more informal discussion. So for the last question, on the left, please.
Gentlemen, it's probably overly optimistic to expect a direct answer to this because I think, as everyone has observed by now, you have answered possibly 2 questions directly in the entire session. However, I'd just like to comment on the following fact. Less than 24 hours after President Kennedy was assassinated, the Russian press announced that Lee Harvey Oswald was an agent of some sort of right-wing fascist plot. Since no one in the United States had access to that sort of information, at least insofar as we are aware, where in the world did you draw that conclusion, and was it somehow related to Mr. Oswald's 3-year stay in the Soviet Union? Did this give you access to information our government has not yet uncovered?
Where, could I ask you this question? Where in the world do you pick up your information?
It's common knowledge that this was a statement issued by the Russian press within 24 hours.
Where from you pick up the information?
I read it in the paper within 24 hours after the assassination that this was the Russian reaction.
So which paper did you read it?
Any one of 6 newspapers would also pass this on.
In Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles, the New York Times, would you consider that an authoritative source? The United Press International, the American Press, are those reliable sources, or perhaps they are lying?
Well, maybe you asked the correspondents who started all this, where they pick up the information. That's all.
May I ask a last question, please?
No, I'm sorry, we're going to really have to end now. I'm sure there are many more questions, and we can take them to the upstairs because we have a very tight schedule today, and in order to meet it, I'm sorry, but we will have to end the questions now, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and if you wish to, please go to the upstairs now. Thank you.